In today's video, the importance of intentional conversations with Michele Mattoon. Hello, coaches! Welcome back to another episode of Coach Better Quick Tips. My name is Kim Cafino, and I've worked with hundreds of teachers, coaches, and leaders in schools around the world to help them create thriving and sustainable instructional coaching programs. And I'm on a mission to help you coach better. Wherever you are in your coaching journey, we can support you. Come learn with me in one of our courses or private mentoring packages designed specifically for instructional coaches. Join our global Coach Better community, ask any questions you'd like to hear us answer, and find all of our resources for instructional coaches on our website at coachbetter.tv. You can also find us on social media at Eduro Learning, in our Coach Better Facebook group, and subscribe to our channel here on YouTube to catch all of our latest videos. If you're not sure where to start, take our free quiz to get a tailored list of resources delivered straight to you and designed specifically for your level of coaching experience. Find it at coachbetter.tv/quiz. In today's episode, we're talking about the importance of intentional and structured conversations. This is a highlight from one of my favorite episodes from a previous season featuring Michele Mattoon, Executive Director of the National School Reform Faculty, or NSRF. Recently, as part of one of our ACES Leader Speaker Series sessions, we had Jennifer Abrams share with our community about stretching your learning edges. Jennifer has also been a guest on the podcast. I'll link her episode up here and in the show notes for you. And as she said on the podcast, educators are not trained in having conversations with other adults. So as Michele said in her full episode, which I'll link up here and in the podcast for you, being able to have intentional and structured conversations through the use of protocols can really help us navigate difficult and challenging topics that, as Michele points out, sometimes need guardrails. Because instructional coaches work with so many different stakeholders, with so many different perspectives, experiences, and opinions, it's so important for us to know how to structure conversations for productive discourse and dialogue. Protocols are one way we can do that. If you're curious about what protocols are and how you can use them in your practice, I'll link another video about that up here and in the show notes as well. If protocols are new to you, make sure to check out the full episode with Michele that I'll link up here and in the show notes for you. Once you start using protocols in your professional learning and group conversations, you won't want to go back. In this episode, we'll learn why this kind of structure is so important. Okay, let's jump into the clip with Michele. Why is it that we don't have protocols in our practice already, and why are they so important? And I think you've kind of addressed that in a couple of different ways, but maybe give you a little bit more space to talk about the quote that I think of is, and it's not related to protocol specifically, but I also spoke to Jennifer Abrams for the Women Who Lead interviews and for the podcast, and she often says, we know how to have conversations, but we don't know how to have intentional conversations. And that connects me to protocols right there, because we just kind of expect that we're going to go into a meeting of professionals and we're going to be able to have an intentional conversation. But actually, there are so many other dynamics at play that we need to have this structure defined for us so that we can have an intentional conversation.
Yeah. You know, one of the quotes I always think of when I think of this, when I give trainings, is actually one that Einstein did, which is we can't solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. I might paraphrase that a little bit, but it's true. And the thing is that it doesn't come naturally to human beings to have a structured conversation. We don't do that well. And in fact, when people don't know what to expect and they come to our training, they experience a protocol, and I always debrief it because I was like, okay, here's your first experience. How do you feel? And I tend to use one of the most restrictive ones because then it always feels like, oh, this is so much better as they go. But many times people say, well, it just didn't feel natural. And my response to that is always good. We don't want it to be natural, because if we keep doing what we naturally do, we were going to keep doing the same thing that doesn't work over and over again. But I will promise you, our trainings are 5 days, the typical coach's training, that by the end, it's going to feel so natural to you, and you're going to wonder why you hadn't done this, and people just don't do it. So it's such an interesting thing. And like the third day of the training, people, the light turns on over their head, and we facilitators, you say, like on the third day, shift happens, because that is when the mindset, you can see people go, like they get it. It suddenly all comes together for them, and to understand the real power of what it can do really becomes clear to most people at that point. So I think that, this idea of structuring conversations is incredibly important when doing certain things. I think sometimes we get so excited, the people who take the training with structuring things, is they want to then take the tools and sort of force them into conversations. And I say that is the worst thing to do. If you don't need a protocol, please don't use it. Because if you use a protocol when you don't need one, what it does is it teaches people that there's all this useless, confining structure that doesn't give them anything. So then they just throw the whole baby out with the bathwater at that point. So, please don't do that. Only use a protocol or structure if you need it. If you can just have a conversation, just have the conversation. That's okay. You don't have to protocol everything.
Yeah. And I also think because protocols, this is just and again, I'm not a trainer. I have just read the website and that kind of stuff, but that's been my experience too, is like actually intentionally using protocols when you need them and not using protocols in the same session. Let's say you're doing a PD.
Yes, absolutely.
That also really helps people see like, oh, when we do the protocol, we're having this structured, purposeful conversation. But then there's another time when we just chat at our tables, and like being able to compare between the two is actually a kind of a powerful opportunity to see why the protocol is so valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I just want to say that, protocols are just so useful. If you have a certain amount of time, you want to get something done, you want to hear every voice in the room. Generally speaking, people who use protocols have a set of ground rules, or we call them agreements. How do we work? How do we do the best, job with each other as we work through a process? And, it's such an important piece. It sets this culture. It's like knowing what to expect. You sort of settle into it. And the more you use them, the easier they become and the deeper you can go with them as you go. So it really does. I'm sure you experienced that, Kim. It really is a learning process where it's like, oh, gosh, this was really good for this thing. And this was really, this was a very important step. So we don't want to take that piece out if we don't have enough time, right?
Yeah. And I think that time piece is really important too, because this is what I was going to say before, is like recognizing that when you do a protocol, it might take a little bit longer than if you were previously used to just having people have a conversation and you could say, okay, talk for 5 minutes. And you maybe wouldn't get the result you wanted, but you knew it would only take 5 minutes. Whereas the protocol itself might actually take 10 minutes because everyone gets their time to speak or whatever. It takes longer, but the outcome is better. And I think that is also part of the judgment of when you use them versus when not. I want to ask another question. I can tell Clint has something to say.
Yeah, I was going to say, you sort of answered the question that I had in my mind as you were talking about this. I think one of the things maybe as a new coach or as a new leader, or working with the teams, like how do you really decide when is the protocol appropriate and when it's not? And I think that idea of like, when do you have that structured conversation versus when do you want to have that free talk? And like Kim was saying, how do you ensure that everybody has a voice in the room, right? And keeping mindful of your time constraints. I'm just wondering if there are any other key considerations that you would share as a new coach or as a new leader to be like, in this sort of situation, you really must 100% really, I don't want to say always use a protocol, but consider using a protocol.
Yeah, I would say, I always consider using a protocol. Number one, if there's a problem that needs to be solved. I mean, if as a group, somebody said, look, you as a group need to come up with a solution to this. And if it seems to be a problem that somebody can't just say, hey, what if we do that? And everybody's going to go, oh yeah, that sounds great. If it's going to be more than that, I would use a protocol. Absolutely. I would say that they especially come in handy if the problem or if what you're trying to do is somewhat complex and it has layers or if you know that people have strong feelings on many sides. If you think that in that group, some people feel disenfranchised or hardly ever get to speak, and some people, as Kim said, speak a lot and all the time and repeat themselves with emphasis, that's the time to use a protocol. And I just think that, it's protocols, it's jargon. When I say protocol, people are like, oh gosh, what is that? I have no idea. And the minute that we introduce jargon into what we're saying, we've immediately divided the group into two groups. Us, the people who know what protocol means or that jargon means, and them, those people who don't. So immediately you're putting those people who don't know into a poor position, because either they're going to have to admit that they don't know what it means and ask people to explain it to them, which can seem bad in certain groups, or they just pretend they know what it means and hope at some point it will come to them, but that puts a lot of tension. So I think that one of the things that we need to be very careful of when we introduce this is to say, and I will not use the word protocol. I'll say, hey, listen, we've had this experience where we haven't gotten, to actually finish what we've been trying to do, or this is a tough problem. I've got this structured way of having our conversation. Let's try it. And, I'll just take you through step by step. And at the end, we'll just talk about it and see if it was helpful or not. And people, if you say it that way, are usually like, okay. And so okay, here's the first thing we're going to do. Here's the second thing. And by the way, I'm timing it, blah, blah, blah. And then they go, wow, that was really great. Where did you learn that? And that might be where I say, oh, well, we call it a protocol and blah, 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 blah. But I think that, that resistance can be immediate simply because of something like using jargon to say, oh, I'm so smart. I learned this protocol and we're going to try it. And people are really like, no, I don't want to do it. So you have to be careful. But I do think that, there are definitely situations where I think it can be helpful. If you think that you may have difficulty getting done, getting something and having everybody happy with the end result, I would say use a protocol.
Yeah, that's a really good point too about the jargon and not saying the word protocol. I also call it a structured conversation. I don't know if that's in your literature and I stole it, or if
yes,
that's just
we do.
Okay, so that's probably where I got it. But everyone knows what a conversation is, right? So if you can say, how do you feel about having a structured conversation about this? Here's how this one is going to work. That kind of. And as soon as you do that and they go through it, what's amazing is then they have this toolkit of, like you said, 100 or 200 other protocols, because now they know what a protocol is and they can go to your website and find all those other protocols. So I think that is like a nice way to bring us all together in a process that doesn't feel intimidating, but also opens the door to future potential structured, purposeful conversations And I'm sure there is a ton to get out of going through the process of being trained on how to use them than just like showing up and using them like I do. So then there's also that opportunity too, right? Like really building your skills on facilitating conversations properly. I hope you enjoyed this clip with Michele. If this clip resonated with you, please make sure to listen to the full episode. I'll link it in the show notes for you and up here. Protocols really are a wonderful pathway to so many different types of conversations. As instructional coaches, we are facilitating conversations all the time, with small groups, with teams, in large-scale professional learning. To be able to ensure that those experiences meaningfully engage all participants, we need to structure those conversations. Leading professional learning and facilitating these types of conversations is a huge part of our role. No matter how many experiences we have, we can always do a little bit better. That's why leading professional learning and structures for facilitating conversations are included in all of our courses for coaches at the level that's right for your experience. Each of our 3 global cohorts will help you take the next step in your coaching advocacy, either as a brand new coach or aspiring coach in getting started as an instructional coach, or as a current coach or educator ready to build a thriving coaching program in the Coach Certificate and Mentorship Program, or as an experienced coach who's ready to lead in Coaches as Leaders. Find all the details about all of our courses for coaches at coachbetter.tv/learn. Global cohorts open only once a year. If you're not sure which course is right for you, watch one of our free workshops for instructional coaches, designed for your experience level so you can take the next step in your learning right now and uncover which course might be right for you next. Find them all at coachbetter.tv/learn. Wherever you are in your coaching journey, we can support you. If you're curious right now, if you have questions, please reach out. You can leave a comment below or on the show notes on our website at coachbetter.tv. You can join our Coach Better Facebook group, or you can find us on social media at Eduro Learning and send me a DM. I'd love to support you in your coaching journey. See you next time.